Alaska, where the American frontier is still big, wild, and alive. A land of countless streams, glaciers, and mountain peaks. A place where dreams can still be realized for those who dare to venture into its challenging landscape. An exquisite wilderness at the end of the road, where a vanishing lifestyle still exists for a few. This is a story of a few modern-day pioneers who took the leap of faith to pursue their dreams of living off the grid in the remote bush of Alaska. This is Alaska. Its sheer size is staggering. It's a land larger than life, stronger and bigger than man and machine. It's home to the largest mountain in America, Denali. From glaciers to wildlife, Alaska is an enchanting place. A last reminder of the spectacular beauty of what an unspoiled environment should look like. The eyes of the world are all focused on downtown Anchorage, Alaska. For there is no sporting event in the world quite like the last great race. For this is where the ceremonial start of the famed Iditarod sled dog race begins. For anyone who has ever believed in the call of the wild, this is it. Iditarod veteran Ramey-Smyth has finished the last great race an unprecedented 16 times and is once again facing the 1,100-mile journey to Nome.
Well, I'm going to take this team of dogs and we're going to do a really good job of management and going to give them a really fun camping trip, and then we're going to race like hell.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! One of the big competitors from Willow. This is Ramey-Smyth on his way to Nome. Ramey has been called the best closer in Iditarod's history. He is a log builder. He's married to Becca. They're the father of Ava, who is 2.5.
Ramey lives on a parcel outside of Houston where his father had homesteaded, and it's a beautiful area, very, very private, very secluded. There's no electricity that will be there for many, many generations to come. They've since built a nice home there and have a wonderful dog lot, and the population of their dogs have increased, and they also have a beautiful little girl. And Ramey, I think his priorities have changed a lot since I've known him, and they've changed for the better, but he still You know, he's a musher, that's what he does, and that's same with, you know, his partner. That's what they do. It's their love, and they live for it.
Okay, I will.
Ramey-Smyth was born on the banks of the Yukon River in the village of Tanana. The village lies at the confluence of the mighty Yukon and Tanana rivers. The rivers provide water, transportation, and a ready supply of fish. Dog mushing was an essential part of Ramey's childhood. It was how they got around during the 7 months of winter. It was also how children got to school. Dog mushing is in Ramey's DNA. He comes from a mushing family. His father, Bud Smith, ran the very first Iditarod and had become part of its historical birth, although he'd been mushing dogs long before the Iditarod was ever thought of. Ramey's mother, Lolly Medley, was quite famous in her own right. In 1975, she was the second woman to ever finish the Iditarod. Among other family members, Ramey's brother Sim is also an Iditarod musher. Ramey had a great appreciation for the rugged environment he grew up in. As a youngster, he was trained in wilderness survival, was a firefighter, worked on a fishing boat, and became a licensed hunting guide. He now lives outside of Willow, Alaska, with his wife Becca and their 3-year-old daughter, Ava. Becca is also a veteran dog musher who shares in Ramey's passion.
This is the upper edge of Houston, and it's where I grew up. You know, they used to log the area for railroad ties and such, and had a gold mining trail up through here in the late 1800s. Basically a one-room cabin with a loft and a little hand pump and for a well. And that's where I remember my Sesame Street toys and you know, no electricity. My first memory of dogs is a hill not far from here. It was been icy and rainy early season, and there was a huge sled with a load of groceries, and all I remember is we came flying around the corner and flipped over. Groceries went everywhere, and brown bags scattered here, there, and yon, and dogs went on down the hill.
Ramey owns a custom log home business, which is operated during the summer months. His principal helping hand and fellow musher is a hard-working young man by the name of Jeff Hemann.
Yeah, Jeff, I met him quite a few years ago, and has really come into his own, and just been one of my best friends. And
Jeff had been working as a guide for veteran Iditarod musher Linwood Fiedler, doing sled dog tours on the Godwin Glacier outside of Seward.
I met Jeff Hemann through Laura, which is Ramey's little sister, when they were working together on the glacier outside of Seward.
I met Jeff up on the glacier working for Linwood Fiedler, and he recognized the effectiveness of the training methods that I was using, and he's like, you know, where does this come from? What does it do? All full of questions, and I'm like, this is from my brother Ramey. This is the way that we train dogs, and Jeff's like, well, I want to be a part of that. Bring it on. So that was pretty much it.
I'll truck my dogs out here. I actually would. It would be a blast to come. I couldn't go as far as you guys, you know, at this point, but it'd be fun just to follow you. And
Oh, it's
go
such
up a,
a great trail.
That would be a blast.
And now it's snowing.
Yeah.
Now, yay.
Summer after we got off the glacier, Jeff jumped in head first and started helping Ramey out, and next thing you know, he's the go-to guy. He's got it together, and I don't know really honestly what Ramey would do without him if he didn't have him. She's just highly effective at everything he does.
Yeah, like this fat here, this is the stuff that's, you know, moose don't really have a whole lot of fat on them, but the fat that they have it's surrounding like their heart and their organs, and that's what keeps them insulated and warm in the wintertime. You know, all that I ever knew about dog mushing when I was getting into it was the Iditarod. You know, following the Iditarod, Linwood Feather, Ramey-Smyth, and kind of, you know, getting familiar with those names. But, you know, just to see the life, you know, to videotape the life and what it kind of takes is hard. You know, every day is an adventure, you know. You got people that live like in the city or something, and, you know, this might be like their whole big expedition for the month, but we do an expedition every day, you know, getting water, cooking food, daily upkeep, family life, work life, dogs, and owning your own business. It's takes a lot of work and a lot of balance, and dogs are happy. Of course, out here, as a good dog mushers and every good honest person needs, is a good old trusty outhouse, which, you know, with as much construction, and I'm still building right now, there's just not enough minutes in the day to do it. So anyway, that's our outhouse. It's actually a nice fishing shack. I use for mushing with these dogs when I go camping because it pops out really fast, but I've incorporated it into our outhouse, so we're good to go.
Yeah, well, I think Jeff and Ramey gravitate together because they have a lot of similarities. They have a lot of the same goals, they have a lot of the same hobbies, and they have a lot of the same priorities. They're a really good match as far as friends.
Eight-inch insulated pipe, very expensive. Too expensive.
The home begins to take shape before the snow flies.
Finally getting our wood stove in. It has been, there's been a few chilly mornings, so it's the real fish head soup. I like this stuff. Try not to burn it. This pot will feed about 64 dogs, but we add some kibble to it. This stuff. Break it all apart for me. And then pour it into the buckets, let it cool off. They don't like their soup too hot.
There is soon a sense of urgency as winter approaches. Both Jeff and Ramey start training their sled dogs well before the snow falls, usually in the month of August.
These guys are brothers here.
The typical sled dog team consists of 20 or fewer dogs and are all hooked together on a central line called a gang line. The gang line is fastened to whatever is being pulled, and in this case, it's an old ATV. Early season training usually involves ATVs instead of dog sleds, primarily because of the lack of snow. It is the most common method of training used in Alaska today. ATVs offer a greater control of the dogs, as well as the correct amount of weight to be pulled. Ramey and Jeff often get together and talk about their dogs.
She finished with Becca's main leader in the quest. And Becca's other main leader is Bishop. That's her other pup. That's Charlie's brother.
Right. He's doing it.
She just ran 70 miles last night, so she's a little tired.
Wow.
Ready to go back to bed. This is the dog that saved that paid the mortgage and saved the house, and she's the dog. She wanted to help me come in second in the Cusco, and then I was third in Iditarod, and all the mushers voted, and made her the Golden Harness winner for the year in Iditarod. I was lucky to have her. And she's finished Iditarod 10 times, and that's the dog with the best attitude that I've ever known. So, she's a good one.
This one likes my shoe.
As old dogs retire from the team, they're replaced with a new batch of puppies, usually from the previous champions. Winter is the most challenging part of life in Alaska. It gives new meaning to the word extreme. Winter temperatures skim to numbers so low that they are barely comprehensible. And yet people get out and go, enjoying whatever Mother Nature throws at them. As winter closes in, work only increases for Jeff and his wife Heather. For them to be able to start building their cabin by next summer, they must first finish each log one at a time.
This is kind of what we're doing. We're milling the top of these logs, milling the bottom, which means cutting them flat and flat so they'll stack, and then it still has that nice round interior and exterior. But basically from the center we find 4 inches up and 4 inches down, horizontal line. We roll the log, snap lines on all 4 sides of the log. This looks like this would be a good snap here. Pretty good at that.
With dogs needing to be fed and cared for several times a day, there isn't such a thing as a day off.
Well, here's where we used to live. We lived here just over a year. It was a little chilly in the winter, but you know, propane heat, propane stove, propane refrigerator, so it's not all too bad. And put a little straw underneath for some insulation, and now we put some metal roofing on to help protect it a little better from the weather. But yeah, it was Ramey and I, pretty cozy, the 4 kids. Oh, it was nice. I think the wheels even completely frozen.
Challenged at every turn, Becca, like all wives and mothers here, devotes exhausting hours to the care of the dogs, food, and looking after her children.
Pretty good. All right. You have to pedal though. Remember? We practiced this summer.
Dogs are fed whatever is readily available. In Alaska, it's salmon. Salmon provides an excellent source of protein and a treat for both man and dog. Large quantities are caught during the short summers, frozen, and then eaten during the long winters.
Soup and fish? Yeah. Okay. Look at these pieces, Ava.
But I can.
This is good stuff for making fires. It's one of your favorite. Perfect day.
Hi.
It's about 21 below today. So it was nice to have the fire going this morning, first thing. Gonna taste these high bush cranberries. Ooh, beautiful little frozen gems. Oh yeah. Those are good. Good winter treat.
Taste one.
You want one too? Here's a perfect one. What do you think? No.
The majority of all bush families use good old-fashioned wood for a reliable heat source. It's both renewable and readily available.
All right, you know I can move this place. Here, Heather, you want to put it over here?
Thanksgiving dinner still remains a favorite holiday for these wilderness families. Even though Ramey and Becca's cabin is not completely finished, they feel they have a lot to be thankful for. For them, there is just as much joy in the journey as there is at the finish line.
Ginormous.
This is a time to take a moment to eat good food, tell great stories, and to make plans for the upcoming winter season.
Hey.
We got frozen squash and sweet. Okay, watch the steps here. Good job. Yeah. Here's our outhouse. We even have some custom painting in here. These make all the difference, these little foam pads. This one's for Ava's little seat. Just right on there. So that way you don't have to have a frosty bottom when you go to use the bathroom. As you can see, lots of frost forms in here, so it's doesn't feel very good first thing in the morning. The wood stove is a real luxury to us. Up until about 2 weeks ago, we didn't even have any heat, so it was pretty miserable actually. But everyone tried to stay happy, you know, try to keep her warm. We had a little electric heater that we'd plug into the generator, and it put out about as much heat as a blow dryer. So it wasn't very fun. So we're pretty happy now. So it was a mad rush to get that wood stove in. But first of all, before, you know, major snow and major cold came, but, you know, we have to train the dogs. So it was just all craziness. It was very stressful. Tensions were very high. So this wood stove has upped our quality of living beyond belief right now. We're all much happier for it.
There's a heightened sense of urgency as snow begins to fall.
Time's running out now. We gotta keep moving. The rain has turned to snow. Snow turns to a lot of snow in Alaska. Yeah, trying to get all this wood cut up before we get too much snow. I started to get a bunch of snow here today. We got kind of a late jump on the year. We've had a lot of projects that have run kind of overlapped this fall with helping Ramey out, building his cabin and dog training, trying to keep those guys moving. And so luckily we got good neighbors with the Negus family. They've been helping out, you know, with the tractor and the kids and everybody jumping in there, not afraid. Veterans Day today, no school. What better thing to do for a kid when they're not at school than to go work in the woods a little bit.
This is the culmination, where all the hard work, training, and sacrifice finally pay off. This is the core purpose why mushers have been training diligently for the past 8 months. These amazing canine athletes are ready along with their trainers, ready for a larger-than-life journey through unbelievable terrain and conditions only to be conquered by those who can be called heroic. This is their Super Bowl, their Tour de France, all rolled into one.
How'd you like that excursion?
We don't even have, I don't know, we maybe had some change.
Jeff and Ramey, friends, fellow mushers, and now competitors, finished this race one behind the other.
Well, it's dog racing for you.
You bet, you bet.
Can't
I know.
really bet what I won.
Hate looking behind me. I'm like, oh, every time I look back, there's someone there. Today it was like 2 or 3. But good experience, you know, every passing that we did, everything went really great. Steve next here, he was ahead of, I passed him off the beginning. We did a lot of this, and you know, it was really good practice actually for all of us.
We got good leaders.
Yeah,
No doubt about that.
At the proverbial end of the road lies the little historical village of Talkeetna, Alaska. Back in the day, it was a very rough and tumble frontier outpost with a general store, 2 hotels, and a couple of saloons. It was there that prospectors, trappers, and lumberjacks came for a chance to strike it rich. Today, Talkeetna is far from ordinary and still attracts those who seek a true wilderness experience. The bush plain, for most living in the vast interior, represents the only link to the outside world. Only accessible by air, most of the remote villages depend solely on the plain to transport food, fuel, equipment, and other vital supplies. Because of its unique ability to take off and land from almost any type of terrain, hunters, fishermen, and mountain climbers utilize the bush plain as a necessity. Johnny, Jesse, and Steve, 3 good friends, prepare to freight building supplies to a remote piece of property they own, which is located between the village of Talkeetna and Denali National Park. Up to a few years ago, these 3 friends didn't even know of each other, but soon realized they all shared the same dream and thus became friends. The dream was to find a remote piece of land, buy it, build a cabin, and live a lifestyle off the grid.
Rode out here and we're at the cabin, little trapper cabin that's sitting next to the swamp. We use this as a base camp. It's definitely much more comfortable than a tent.
As any experienced woodsman knows, a good wood stove is vital to survive Alaska's harsh winter.
I got the opportunity to come to Alaska. I met up with Steve and Jesse. They were getting ready to do some work on their land. I got the offer to go and help on building a cabin.
Hey, is the propane on, Jesse?
No.
I'm going to turn that on real quick.
In that, the trade-off, instead of being cash, was I was able to get the opportunity to get 5 acres of land.
Get a coffee cube.
It is not unusual to have everything in a cabin frozen solid if left unattended for more than a day in sub-zero temperatures, including your coffee. The next order of business would be to brew up a hot cup of coffee.
Coffee, or boilable water, and then put the percolator in.
In order to watch the movie, you must have this.
Originally, I met Jesse while working at the Roadhouse, local diner here in town, and basically just started renting at the same place because it was kind of convenient. It was a local place to rent in town, and actually built a friendship, in which case, subsequent years, we actually rented again together, and kind of just in conversation wanted to know why we were in Alaska. A lot of people end up in Alaska and they don't really know why. But for me, it was kind of to liberate myself and to buy a piece of land, actually have a place to call home. Land in this area was relatively inexpensive, a lot of it inaccessible. The more access it had, obviously, the more expensive it was going to be.
Here shortly. What sleds we want to use and where we
And
pack
we
stuff.
just wanted some place that was out in the middle of nowhere where we could, essentially live free.
What we have here is a generator. Runs off of gasoline and provides us with the electricity necessary to run our electric lights. Eventually we can use the water to do exactly what this is doing.
You know, there's a lot of movement in the world right now of people wanting to leave a lesser footprint on the planet, things like global warming, things like that become an issue. But Alaska really offers a wild environment to kind of make whatever you want out of it. And so Jesse kind of had that idea in mind, and so we set out to buy some land.
I met Steve, what was it? The first second year I was up here. I mean, relatively soon after I got up here. And we essentially had the same dream. We wanted to build cabins and become self-sufficient out in the wilderness.
The Panther was the same way about it. I remember it being really sticky and taking a long time for it to, this thing could stand to be polished.
We found 80 acres that is way out there. In order to travel to the land, we have a multitude of ways we have to get there, because during the summer and the winter, the weather is very different and the river is either frozen or flowing. So during the summers, we hop on a boat and we travel up the river, and we get off at a landing and then take three-wheelers on trails about 4 miles to the home site.
Most of the snow machines that we have are actually at least 10 years older than me. So they're like in this mid-70s, and we have a couple that are 80s, and then our newest machine is a 2003.
If you want to pull Jesse here, we got a pair of vice grips right here on the seat for that boat.
Well, this is the key. When you're working with older machines, you always have breakdowns, so we always have to be on top of our game in the mechanics.
We got this old machine out in the field, out in the middle of nowhere, and we fixing it up, and we're gonna try to get her running and utilize it out there on the land.
Yeah, right there. I'll tell you what, man, it just goes to show that, like, what they say about one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Right.
I see things like this sitting all the time and wonder why people don't utilize them for their value. And a lot of it is people just don't have the ability to sit down and take things apart and fix them and come up with ideas to be able to fix something. Parts and pieces are often hard to get here. Necessity, kind of dictates, what people actually, their mechanical ability. I didn't always have the money to actually buy things new, and so I always bought things that might be secondhand or needed a little bit of fixing. So.
Well, we're talking about this trip back here shortly, and what sleds we want to use and where we want to pack stuff.
Yeah, I'm thinking of taking both machines back. So just one. Probably work out better.
Yep.
I was thinking we could put this behind the Panther and go and get firewood.
That would
at
work.
least just on the main trails that we've made out here.
Plan is to run out to the home site, chop down some trees. It's snowing out, huh? I don't know what's gonna happen. And yeah, get some trees down for tomorrow so we can haul them.
After returning from a trip to town, Johnny, Jesse, and Steve unload some of the much-needed supplies at base camp.
Tomorrow what we're going to do is cut all our 4x8s into 4x4s and load them onto that sled and get them the rest of the way out to the site.
They're down at the landing?
Yeah, well they're halfway between the landing and they're at that first nasty hill coming up that trail. These are three-wheeler parts. We run mainly three-wheelers during the winters. I mean, not the winters, but the summers. And as a result, we break parts on them a lot. Well, we technically live off the grid. Even though there is a power line intertie near our location, it's not a functional one. And so we intend to provide ourselves with our own electricity. And there's multiple ways to do that. We can use the wind, we can use water, we can use solar, but each one of them has their drawbacks. If solar isn't so good in the winter. And the wind, well, the wind has to be blowing. But water, as long as it's flowing all the time, you have electricity. So we have these running streams that are going through our properties, and we're going to get turbines, and we're going to provide ourselves with electricity simply by dropping a turbine into the water. And as long as the water flows, we can run pretty much any modern convenience in a cabin out in the wilderness.
Close by, at least as the crow flies, lives one of the last remaining bush friends that Johnny, Jesse, and Steve know. His name is Bob Paul, but 10 miles of wilderness travel would be so arduous and time-consuming that they only see each other a couple of times a year. After serving time in the Vietnam War, Bob found his way to Alaska to begin a new adventure.
I really enjoy being alone in the wilderness. And Alaska's about the only place in the United States where I feel you can do that. One of the things I didn't understand about this whole process, and I think that a lot of people don't grasp, is how hard it is to get here. And a big part of the beauty of being here is the fact that it is very difficult to get here. There's a network of trails, so to speak, out in the bush, and some of the trails are only usable in wintertime when there's snow and ice on the ground, and other trails can be used seasonally to some degree. Some seasons the trails are so mushy, the earth is so soft that the trails, you can't transport over them until they dry out. Like at breakup time when the frost is coming out of the ground, the trails get so soft, any kind of machinery or walking over it it turns into oatmeal and it's impossible to travel. At this time of year, living here, I have a 55-gallon water barrel, and I fill it up almost twice a week. To do that, I first start the generator so I have electricity to run the pump. And then I run down to the spring where the pump is and connect the pipe to the pump. And then I run back up the hill, turn on the switch and fill my water barrel. And then when I'm done filling the water barrel, I run back down the hill and unhook the pump from the pipe so the water can drain out so my pipe won't freeze, and then run back over to the generator and turn the generator off. So on Monday when I went to fill my water tank, I did everything. I started the generator, I ran down, I hooked up the pump, I came back up here and flipped the switch and boom, no water. And I'm going, oh my God, my water system must have frozen. So what could it be? I'm having all these bad thoughts. And then it dawned on me that usually when you throw the switch to turn on the pump, the lights in the house go dim because the pump takes a lot of electricity. And that didn't happen, so I thought I must have an open circuit rather than a frozen water pipe. So I remembered that earlier in the week, these two moose had come cruising out of the woods and right in front of my cabin and walked right past the wires that attached the electricity to the pump. And what the moose had done was he had stepped on the wire and unplugged it. So it was such a relief to be able to fix my water system by just plugging the cord back together again.
One of the reasons Bob lives the bush life is that not everything is owned by someone else. You have wide open places, you have the wood for your fires, you have the meat, and you don't have to go out and buy everything you need to survive. There is no surprise as to why Bob loves his life as a bushman.
This is actually kind of nice in the wintertime. The terrain out here is a lot more irregular in the summer. There's dips and wows, and out here in the wintertime with a snowpack like this, it's more like a flat sidewalk to walk on. I got pieces of trees laying around. How come you got this piece of tree in your house, Bob? Well, it's going to become a piece of furniture. It has to dry. The lumber has to dry really well before you can make it into furniture. So all winter long, I've been putting up with the bark falling off of it and sap running out. It's a good thing I'm letting them dry inside. They get good and dry because when trees grow, they twist, and when they dry, they shrink and they counter twist. So those boards started out good and flat earlier this fall, and now they're slightly twisted. It might be hard for you to see, but I can see they've twisted quite a bit over the winter. Like that used to set flat, and now it rocks, you know, so. And the bark is starting to fall off. But they're getting good and dry. Like I wouldn't be afraid to start turning them into furniture right about now. In the summertime, the river's kind of noisy, but this time of year, all the water's under ice, so you can't hear it. I always liked being out of the city and into the woods and away from civilization. And I didn't realize just how much I enjoyed that until I started spending more time out. It's not possible to be totally free of civilization, and I don't want to be totally free of civilization. I want to be able to get to town and get foods and things. I discovered that when I spent time alone in the bush, it was even better than if I was with other people. Sometimes when I go out, you know, like just recently I'll go off on snowshoes and snowshoe out some territory I've never been before. And I'll think about, you know, it's very possible that no human being has ever set foot on this soil before, ever. I mean, many of my steps that I take are in places where pretty good chance even as long as there's been human activity and life on the earth, there's a pretty good chance that no other human being has set foot in this area before. And going along the same lines of how when you're out in the woods by yourself, your sensitivities change. You become sensitive to different things than you would in the city. You can also tell where the hot spots are. And you're going, well, what does he mean, hot spots? And when I refer to hot spots out here in the wilderness, to me, hot spots are the places where life is easy. And any place that you have an abundance of salmon congregating regularly in the summers, that would be a hot spot. It's a hot spot for the salmon, it's a hot spot for the bears, the coyotes, the wolves, anything that needs something to eat is going to go there. They're all going to congregate at that hot spot and either feed on those fish or feed on each other, and including humans. So ancient peoples that lived here long before we ever came also congregated in those hot spots, and they have left evidence behind. You can tell they've been here. And so when I talk about, there's a lot of places I go where I know pretty good chance no human being has ever set foot in this piece of soil before. There's other places I go that are absolute wilderness that I can tell real good chance a lot of people have set foot on this particular piece of soil over the eons as well.
Water is an essential fact of life. Every living creature on Earth depends on it. People living in the bush are no exception.
One of my real important things on my list of priorities was to put water in this cabin, and so how I did that was I have a spring that water gushes from the earth down below out of a spring about 60 feet below us. And I pump it up here and put it into a 55-gallon water holding tank. And then from that tank, the water feeds via gravity flow, so I don't need any power to power up my water system. It just all flows from this water tank by gravity over to my kitchen sink. And ta-da, I have water. So now I can bathe, I can shave, I can take a spit bath, I can boil coffee, I can wash dishes, I can wash my hands. This is my water tank. It's a 55-gallon plastic tank, and everything feeds out of here, gravity feeds. This is my hot water heater. I take this hose and turn this valve and out of my tank into this. What this is like a turkey cooker. And I just fill it at 7 gallons. I fill it full of water. And I turn on the propane and heat it up until it hits 100 degrees. And then once it's 100 degrees, it's, for me, the perfect temperature to take a shower. So then I have a pump. It's just a little sump pump that I stick down in there, and it runs on 12-volt battery power via an inverter. So I just turn the inverter on, and then the pump will turn on and start pumping water out of the tank and into the shower. That beeping noise you hear is telling me that my batteries need charging. So I'm going to turn this off because it's kind of irritating to listen to that, but you get the idea. 3 through those two 12-volt deep cycle batteries, I get enough power to power up my water pump to take a hot shower whenever I want one.
Ramey raced the Iditarod once again this year from Anchorage to Nome, Alaska, a distance of 1,100 miles.
That's a 2 a.m. special. 2 a.m. It's made to deflect, you know, when you're coming at a tree, you know, it deflects it off there. That's much better.
Despite getting very sick on the trail with pneumonia and fighting extreme temperatures down to 45 below zero, he still managed to finish the race in 6th place, taking just over 9 days to complete. Ramey and Becca are expecting their second child, the next addition to the long legacy of Smyth Mushers. Bob is still living his bush life and believes he has found heaven on earth. John, Jesse, and Steve are still working toward obtaining their goal of independence. With one cabin almost finished, they still have 2 remaining cabins to be built. When Jeff's not working with Ramey, he is busy working on his own cabin with his wife Heather. Every log Jeff and Heather finish puts them one step closer to their goal. Today, Ramey and Jeff are busy hauling, peeling, and preparing logs for an upcoming log home project. Building in remote locations, as they do, can be quite challenging. But when all is said and done, also quite satisfying.
Down, you know, with the weather, but I know that we can do it.
There are few unsettled places left in the world. The great Alaskan wilderness is one of them.